back to the kick. It's quite a fast tempo track. It's 135 BPM. If it was a slow track, 120 BPM, you could allow the tail of the kick and the basses, you know, to breathe. But it's quite a fast tempo track, so you know you want these things to hit, disappear, make room for the rest of the stuff. And this is actually quite slow. Usually I do 140 BPM, so you really have to address those problems on the faster tracks. So if you've got this long tail kicking, you've got a fast bass line in between, it just gets messy. So here, here's a sampler, nice short envelope. Everything's hitting fast because I want it to. I just like the sound of the ES24. I could grab the sample itself and throw it as an audio chunk, but I find I have a little bit more control using the sampler. Now I can change certain things like the filter range, how it attacks. I can repitch it if need be, which you can see I've done here. I've moved it. I've done some fine tuning and I've moved it up one semitone. Again, this is to tune it to the track, and you can use various after-tune plugins, you know, to do this. But I find they don't do them very well. I've tried various ways. I don't know. I think it adds something to adds some wrong kind of colour to the actual sample. Well, all the ones that I've tried, maybe I need to try more to correct this. But I find in the sampler, put everything in the sampler, when you're repitching, retuning stuff, it does it precisely. It does it very, very well. So instantly with the kick, one of my favourite UAD compressors, the Teletronics. Very, very good at, I find, with kick and bass, both kick and bass. It's just so simple to use. You know, you've only got three controls on here, and you'll see here the peak reduction is to 20, so it's hitting it quite hard. It's allowing the kick to come through, and it's just pulling it. You know, any volumes going ahead, above the settings that I've got here, it's just pulling them down, making the kick nice and tight. I'm trying to explain this in layman's terms, because if I get too technical, I lose people, and I've been told off for this in the past, so excuse me stalling and stuttering. EQ wise, if I can grab it. Okay, you can see here, round about 5K was 4,350 hertz. That's the top of the kick. It's where, imagine a drummer's playing a kick drum, which everyone forgets with samples. You've got to picture this live aspect. It's when a stick actually hits the skin of the kick, that's the top end that you're going to hear. It's not just all about the punch and the bottom end. You've got to remember that part where he's hitting the top of the drum. It's got the click. That's the thing that's punching through. That's the thing you're going to hear when you're in the real world, or when people listen to tracks. If you've got these tiny little speakers here, which are used for cross monitoring, that in the real world, that's what people are listening to tracks on. This is computer speakers. They're listening in shops on these tiny little speakers. If you don't emphasise this part of the kick, you're not going to hear it. You know, not all these speakers, they won't pick up the bottom end of the kick very well. So always remember to emphasise that top end of the kick, and it'll make wonders for the kick cutting through. And it's important, if you've got a lot going on in the track, to make room for that kick to come through as well. You know, a lot of percussive sounds, maybe covering that part of the kick. So it's important to make sure, you know, leave a little bit of space, make space for everything, so you can actually hear the top part, the dynamics of that kick coming through. I had a problem frequency around about here. I could hear like a whistling frequency, which I killed. I did a dynamic cut to get rid of it. I've given it a little bit of a boost here at see, I used my EQs all around and the wrong way. There we go, at 82 hertz, which I felt, which was the more punchy dynamic part of the kick. And I've just tailed off a little bit at the bottom end there, just for the to allow the bass to come through if they do cross frequencies. I can't remember what's on his second EQ, so I'm just going to have a look. Oh, it's just some extra little boost. And then another favourite tool of mine is UAD's precision limiter, and the reason I've used that, there's some steps in the kick. There might be some little rolls, some little steps, and you generally, when you find that the volume of the kick will jump up, and I just find that limiter just manages to hold them back, keeps them, you know, all the same level. You're not getting any, you know, when you get kick rolls, etc., volume's not jumping out like crazy. That's pretty much it. The original sample is such a good kick, it didn't really need too much work on it. I've just done this fine tuning just to make it sit into this mix, and it punches and it works very, very well. But the danger is to over-process things. I've been guilty of this. Sometimes you think, oh, I have to process, I have to put lots of stuff on there to make it sound good. But you know, the danger is you can overdo it. You can kill a sound. An EQ is a very special tool. If it's used wrongly, you can kill a sound. You know, you think you might be doing something just because you read somewhere, oh, you need to kill certain frequency to get rid of muddiness. Yes, do it. Take a dip at that frequency, cut away, but also make sure that you're not killing the original sound. Have the vision in your head what you want the sound to be like, and if you're making a cut and it's killing the sound, it doesn't need to be killed there, you know. And also, a big mistake what people do, they'll solo the track when they're EQing a track, and they'll make it sound exactly how they want when it's soloed, but as soon as they unsolo it and the rest of the track, it's not going to fit. So I kind of find, yes, do that, so you can kind of get a little bit more detailed what you want to do, but also put it back into the mix and do those cuts, do those changes while it's in the mix to make sure it's going to sit in the mix. Because if you do some dynamic cuts, it might sound lovely in the track. You know, you might cut away a lot of the bottom ends, and it sits wonderfully in the mix. But when you solo it, it sounds really weird and tinny and awful. But if it's working in the mix and you've cut away those frequencies, leave it. It works. You don't have to make a sound glorious, fat and big soloed, because it won't work. You know, you have to do it in the mix, make sure it's sitting in the mix, cut those parts so everything's slotting together in the mix. So now we're going to go to the bass, where it says new bass. Again, I've used actually it's very rare because I usually use the ES2, and I've used the sounds in the ES24. It's like a sample library of some basses that I got. What's wrong with using sample libraries? But again, it's totally making that sound to fit into your track. I just love this bass seemed to work. I did go for the ES2, and I came across this by accident, just recalling what sounds I've used in the past. I thought, oh, I haven't used this for a while, so it's quite refreshing to use this sound again. It's a nice punchy bass, and it just seemed to work. It was kind of a little bit like one of those fluke things. I was flicking through sounds trying to find basses. Just remembering old kind of sounds that I use, and I came across it by accident thinking, what's this? And it just jumped out and seemed to sit in the track. So I was like, oh, it saves me making the bass, because quite often I'll sit there with a synthesizer and, you know, make the bass to go into the track. So this happened to be a lucky fluke. So, but we have to make it work in the track, you know. The sample by itself just doesn't magically work. You know, you have to do some work to make it sit in there. So I'll show you what plugs I used on this one. So I instantly started off with a little bit of EQ to give a slight boost at 5K. What I've done here is I like to add EQs after I've done compressing, because if you start messing around with EQs and you've got a compressor afterwards, then you've completely messed up all your settings on your compressor. You might be boosting a frequency and then the compressor's putting too much down. But what they generally call these type of plugins, this is a UAD package, is a remodeling plugin. They're generally kind of, they've listened to the dynamics of the original and they've tried to recreate this in a software form. So every EQ, especially these remodeling ones, and there's thousands of them out there, they add a little bit of colour to the sound, and quite often what I would do is just literally open up the EQ and not touch anything, because it's adding something different. It's adding different colour, it's adding perhaps a little bit of whip, or just adding something. And this is where I go back to the beginning. Don't get too many plugins, because you just get lost. And the beauty is of not going crazy, because I haven't got that many, but not having that many, I get to know each individual plugin. So if, like this, the original bass sound, I needed to add this certain type of dynamics and colour to it, and I knew instantly the Pultec EQ would do this to the sound. So instantly my ears told me, oh, I know what EQ to add up. The Cambridge compressor does the same thing. The Waves plugins, even the Logic EQ, they all have their different dynamics of how they work. So again, this is such an important tool when you're making music, because if you've got too many EQs, you won't get to learn them. You won't. It takes a while to open up the EQ and know what it instantly does to the sound. So me having a few, I know exactly. I can hear in my head, I want this to have this certain colour, so I know exactly where to reach just to add this colour. So this is why I've gone for the Pultec.